Mystery in the White House. The 1989 disappearance of a missing aide, Washington, D.C., USA. It said the White House never sleeps. That even after midnight, its walls hum with unseen energy, echoes of decisions, regrets, and secrets that refuse to die. In November of 1989, one of those secrets took human form and then vanished. Her name was Claire Whitman, a quiet, meticulous aide assigned to a project no one was supposed to know existed. Her job: catalog confidential wartime documents stored beneath the West Wing. Her shift: overnight, when the halls were empty and the air heavy. That night, cameras caught her badge lighting up at Checkpoint D. Then nothing. No exit record. No footage. No trace. Within 24 hours, her name was erased from staff listings. Her office cleared. And for years, not a single word was spoken about her again. But fragments of her story slipped through the cracks. A janitor who claimed to hear typewriter keys after midnight. A guard who swore an entire hallway appeared where none existed the night before. And a maintenance report that mentioned a sealed door in an area that officially didn't exist. Some say she uncovered a secret meant to stay buried. Others believe she stepped through something older, a space between this world and another. What's certain is that Claire Whitman entered the White House one night in 1989, and the building has never been the same. Tonight, we descend into that mystery, through restricted tunnels, redacted reports, and the spaces between time that history forgot. Welcome to Mystery Vault. If you believe some truths hide in the shadows, if you think the impossible sometimes walks beside the powerful, then subscribe, share, and add your theory in the comments. Because what's buried beneath the White House might not want to stay hidden forever. The shadows beneath power. Every night in the White House, the lights never truly go out. Guards patrol silent halls, the air thick with centuries of decisions and regret. But on one night in November 1989, the building seemed to breathe differently. Claire Whitman, a rising administrative aide tasked with cataloging classified wartime documents, signed into the West Wing shortly before midnight. Her badge blinked once at Checkpoint D. Security footage shows a blur of her silhouette walking past a column of light, then grain and static. The tape repeats that same 2-second loop for the next hour. Some believe it was a camera malfunction. Others say the loop was inserted later. But old technicians recall something else: the smell of ozone that filled the hall after the incident, like air after a lightning strike. In the days before her disappearance, Claire had spoken to a maintenance officer about a door she found behind a filing cabinet. It had no handle, no lock, and no record on the blueprints. When she reported it, the supervisor laughed and told her it was probably a vent cover. That door was later sealed with sheet metal. At 11:42 p.m., she entered the hall where that door once stood. By midnight, the lights flickered throughout the East Wing. No alarms were triggered. No voices heard. The next morning, a janitor found a stack of files on her desk. Each page, stamped Project Silent Wing, restricted. The term doesn't appear in any government record. Rumors spread quietly among night staff. A smell of smoke without fire. A typewriter clacking from an empty room, and a draft of cold air that seemed to breathe from the floor. When technicians checked the vents, they found nothing. Only an empty space 3 feet too wide for its blueprint. Some say Claire found a corridor built during World War II, an experimental room for communications tests that was later abandoned. Others believe she walked through a door that was never meant for humans to open. We don't know what happened to her. But after that night, strange things began to happen inside the White House. Maintenance logs record phantom typing. Guards report seeing someone standing in hallway C long after everyone left, wearing a badge that reads Whitman. Was it a haunting, a cover-up, or a fold in reality itself? The corridor that shouldn't exist. In the world's most photographed building, there is one hallway you'll never see. Not because it's secret, but because it was erased. November 14th, 1989. Night falls over Washington. The rain glistens on Pennsylvania Avenue as staff hurry home. Inside the East Wing, a lone figure moves through the dim corridor, her reflection splitting across polished marble. Claire Whitman carries an envelope under her arm marked Eyes Only. That's the last confirmed sighting. The camera watching that corridor later recorded a flash of white light, a momentary burst that burned the next 3 frames. Technicians called it a data anomaly. But when the footage was slowed down, a shadow appeared, tall, still, standing in the center of the hallway, facing the camera. The moment the light returns, it's gone. For decades, rumors have whispered of a sealed sublevel beneath the East Wing, a wartime experimental communications chamber, later abandoned. In 1943, a report described a temporal echo detected there, signals replaying minutes before they were transmitted. That chamber's entrance was supposed to have been destroyed in 1962. Yet Claire's trail ends right there. She told a colleague she heard a faint hum beneath the floor, like machinery running where there shouldn't be any. The colleague joked it was ghosts of old presidents. Claire didn't laugh. At exactly 11:42 p.m., motion sensors in corridor B tripped in sequence, forward, then backward, as if someone walked through the same space twice in opposite directions. No one else was in the building. Later, an electrician inspecting the breaker box noticed something strange. One fuse slot still labeled Project Silent Wing. It wasn't connected to any live circuit, but when he touched it, he felt a faint vibration, as if the line still carried energy. That same week, the janitor who cleaned the East Wing swore he heard typing in an empty room. Sounded like her, he said. She used to tap her pen against the desk before finishing a report. I heard that rhythm again. Paranormal investigators who later examined the building claimed there was a residual presence, a looped moment in time, anchored to November 14th, 1989. They called it the Echo Hour. During that hour, every clock in the East Wing reportedly slows by 4 minutes. Skeptics say it's coincidence, but believers think something happened that night. An experiment gone wrong, a breach between timelines, a convergence of energy and intent. Whatever happened, Claire Whitman vanished between 2 blinks of light, and something else appeared to take her place. In the next chapter, we follow the whispers that never made it into official reports, the night guard who saw the impossible, and why that hallway remained sealed even after 3 decades. The whistleblower's secret, a voice from the basement. 3 weeks after the disappearance of Claire Whitman, silence had become policy inside the White House. No public statements, no missing person flyers, not even a private memo acknowledging her absence. But behind closed doors, something was moving. A low-ranking staffer named Thomas Keene was the first to break the silence. He worked night maintenance, unseen, unheard, the kind of man the government forgets is even there. Keene claimed he'd been ordered to rewire junction panels in the East Wing basement on the night of November 14th, 1989. He was 2 corridors away from the last place Claire was seen. At first, no one listened, until he mentioned the tape. The tape surfaced years later, an unlabeled cassette buried inside an old maintenance locker. Faded marker across its spine. Log, November 14th, 89. When forensic analysts restored it, what they found chilled them. Static, then faint breathing. Female voice. Testing. Can anyone hear me? Male voice, distant. Don't go in there. Static crackle. Final words. The corridor is open. Experts confirmed the female voice matched archived recordings of Claire Whitman. Keene said the tape wasn't supposed to exist. He'd found it by accident months after the incident while replacing old wiring near the sub-basement server bank. He turned it over to security and was fired the next morning. When contacted years later, he told reporters, that tape didn't record her disappearance. It recorded something coming through. The FBI's internal documents list Keene's statement as unverified, but multiple cross-reference reports show that in December 1989, 1 month after Claire vanished, construction crews sealed a 30-foot section of the East Wing corridor with reinforced steel. The reason given, asbestos containment. Except that corridor didn't appear on any asbestos inspection list. Declassified logs years later revealed several anomalies. A duplicate access badge issued in Claire Whitman's name 2 days after she vanished, a work order labeled Removal of Obsolete Systems, Silent Wing Program. and a transfer notice to a private contractor, Soltech Dynamics, which specialized in secure data recovery. Soltech Dynamics dissolved months later. Its board of directors included 2 former defense analysts from the Reagan administration. This wasn't just an internal investigation anymore. It was a ghost trail that stretched into the private sector, one that someone, somewhere wanted buried. When Thomas Keane went public in 1993, his story barely made local news. He spoke of underground rooms with no lighting and walls that seemed to hum when you stood too close. Days later, he was found unconscious near the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool. No wallet, no memory of what happened. He never spoke publicly again. What made the tape so dangerous? Why seal an entire section of one of the world's most protected buildings? Experts who analyze the restored cassette say the final seconds contain a faint anomaly, an inverted frequency, a tone beneath the human hearing range. When slowed down, it forms a pattern, not random but rhythmic, almost mechanical. One audio engineer described it as a heartbeat inside a machine. Whether it was a glitch, a hidden code, or something else entirely, no one knows. But those who've heard it all describe the same feeling afterward: dizziness, a metallic taste, and a sense of being watched. For the first time, both truth and myth intersect. Was Claire Whitman a victim of conspiracy, or the witness of something far beyond human understanding? Either way, her voice, preserved in that static, continues to echo through the corridors of power. The corridor is open. The echo files. Every secret leaves an echo. Some fade with time. Others keep repeating long after everyone involved is gone. In early 1990, 6 months after the disappearance of Claire Whitman, a classified folder surfaced inside the National Archives incident room. The cover bore no seal, only a red stamp: Echo Files. Inside were 27 photocopied documents, partial budget memos, facility blueprints, and one grainy photograph of a steel-lined corridor. The coordinates printed at the bottom matched the White House sub-basement. Among the pages was a project name repeatedly blacked out, except on one line where the redaction failed. The text read, "Signal Reversal Study, Project Silent Wing, Phase 2. The Echo Files revealed a timeline stretching back to 1943, when engineers experimented with temporal signal reflection, an attempt to send radio messages backward by fractions of a second. It was a Cold War communication strategy intended to predict enemy transmissions. But every test ended in distortion: sound loops, reverse speech, and static patterns that resembled human voices. Decades later, the experiment was reactivated. Phase 2 began in 1988, directly beneath the East Wing. That was Claire Whitman's assignment zone. Analysts reviewing the Echo Files found a handwritten margin note next to a frequency chart. Warning: do not expose personnel beyond 22 seconds. Echo persists. What echo meant was never defined. Investigators within the FBI's Internal Security Unit later confirmed that 3 technicians from Soltech Dynamics, the same company tied to Whitman's disappearance, went missing within weeks of each other in early 1990. None were reported publicly. The more the files were studied, the more they suggested that Project Silent Wing wasn't simply a communications test. It was an attempt to open a transmission channel that might not have been one way. An internal memo dated October 1989 warned that residual frequencies from earlier tests were leaking into standard White House electrical systems. Clocks stalled, power meters surged, and one technician complained of hearing Morse code in the walls. Then came the night of November 14th, Claire Whitman's last recorded shift. Experts say she might have been checking the data stream for irregularities when the signal looped back, amplifying through the sub-basement conduits. That would explain the burned circuits, the missing footage, and the radiation trace discovered days later. But others see something far darker: that the project achieved contact. When analysts slowed the final 20 seconds of the recovered cassette, the one found by whistleblower Thomas Keane, they detected a faint secondary voice beneath Claire's. Computer models reconstructed the pattern into words. Not her voice. The statement divided investigators. Some dismissed it as pareidolia, the human tendency to hear meaning in noise. But others couldn't ignore the precise waveform alignment. A second voice layered half a millisecond out of sync with Claire's. A voice that shouldn't exist. Forensic audio specialists who studied the echo files years later reported unusual effects. Corrupted drives, random power outages, even physical unease while playing the tapes. One lab technician described hearing the sound continue for several seconds after he turned the machine off. By mid-1990, the echo files vanished from official custody. The National Archives listed them as relocated. No destination given, but photocopies surfaced in a private collection belonging to a retired Secret Service officer, labeled simply, "Keep these safe." She was right. Who was she? Was it Claire? Or someone before her who had already heard the echo and tried to warn the next generation? The evidence points toward an unspoken truth. Claire Whitman might not have stumbled into danger. She might have uncovered a project that never ended. The more investigators dig, the louder the echo becomes, as if the building itself remembers. The corridor is open. The man who knew too much. Every investigation has a moment when truth stops whispering and starts screaming. For this story, that moment came in June 1993 when a journalist long believed dead reappeared under a different name. Eric Mason, fiancé of the vanished Aide Claire Whitman, had disappeared from public life 4 years earlier. The last anyone heard, he'd been dismissed from his newspaper and reportedly fled the country. But he hadn't. He was living under the alias Edward Myers in a quiet Maryland suburb, writing freelance technical manuals. Until one night, he sent an anonymous package to a local radio host known for covering unsolved government cases. Inside was a small black notebook, a cassette tape, and a letter. Tell her story before they do. The handwriting was Claire's. The tape was blank, or so it seemed. But when audio engineers at the station played it backward, a voice emerged beneath the static. It wasn't a recording. It was a sequence of tones modulating like Morse code. When translated, it spelled 4 words. Echo file still active. Within 24 hours, Eric Mason, or Edward Myers, was found unconscious in his apartment. The door locked from inside. His laptop destroyed. His phone submerged in a glass of water. The notebook he'd sent to the radio host, however, was intact. Inside were fragmented notes from his own private investigation. Interviews, file numbers, and diagrams of the White House substructure. The final pages contained coordinates and times, all pointing to security rooms beneath the East Wing. But the last line stopped everyone cold. She's still in there. Analysts compared the ink and paper to Claire Whitman's personal journals from 1989. Same brand, same handwriting pressure. But there was one difference. The ink used in Eric's notebook didn't exist until 2 years after her disappearance. The official theory? Eric forged the entry to dramatize his findings. But those who met him say otherwise. They describe a man haunted, convinced he'd received a message written after her death. He told one confidant, "I don't think she died. I think she crossed over." In his final interview, a recording smuggled out through a friend in 1994, Eric's voice trembles. They're using the frequency again. Not to find her, to open it wider. If anyone hears this, burn the tapes. Don't let them finish the cycle. The friend who kept the recording, former technician Harold Finn, later died in a car accident outside Baltimore. The file labeled EM interview vanished from his effects. But what no one expected was what the police found inside Eric's apartment. An old reel-to-reel machine still spinning, though it wasn't plugged in. The last few inches of tape carried a faint pulse pattern identical to the one heard in Claire's recovered cassette from 1989. At this stage, the boundaries between investigation and obsession blurred. Some investigators believed Eric's work proved an ongoing cover-up tied to Project Silent Wing. Others claimed he'd succumbed to guilt and paranoia. But there was one undeniable fact. His coded coordinates led to something real. Weeks after his hospitalization, renovation workers in the East Wing discovered a sealed hatch behind a false wall, not listed in any blueprints. It led to a staircase descending into concrete darkness. Stamped into the steel was a single word, silent. That hatch was resealed within hours by military personnel. No official record of its contents was ever made public. Some say Eric Mason survived his injuries and disappeared again under federal protection. Others believe he was taken, silenced before he could expose what he found. Either way, his message was clear. The echo wasn't an accident. It's an invitation. If true, then the night Claire Whitman vanished wasn't a random disappearance. It was the first step in something that may still be happening beneath the most powerful house on Earth. File reference: echo/subjects. Whitman, Mason, status: incomplete. The forbidden frequency. Every disappearance leaf behind a void, but sometimes that void speaks back. And in the case of Claire Whitman, that voice came not through confession, nor through witness, but through a signal. A pattern of sound no one could explain. The echo frequency, first heard in 1989 and rediscovered after Eric Mason's coded tapes, wasn't just noise. When analyzed, it displayed a repeating series of tones at intervals of 19.89 seconds, the same year Claire vanished. Each sequence began with a low-frequency pulse followed by a rapid oscillation mimicking a human voice. Only one phrase was intelligible: "I'm still here." For months, audio engineers, physicists, and digital forensics teams attempted to decrypt the source. Some believed it was an electromagnetic feedback loop from abandoned White House communication systems. Others believed it was something more, an encoded distress signal transmitted from somewhere within the building itself. One of the first to study it was Dr. Rachel Holt, a sound wave analyst with DARPA. Her team confirmed that the frequency contained spatial data, coordinates embedded in waveform distortion. Those coordinates didn't point to any known location. They pointed below it, exactly 14 meters beneath the east wing. Dr. Holt requested access to investigate the coordinates in late 1994. Her request was denied. 3 months later, she was reassigned to a remote signal tracking project in Nevada. She left behind one cryptic note. "It's not a sound. It's a reply." The echo frequency soon became a classified artifact. A copy was archived under E-File 74C, restricted, and all references to it were redacted from public records. But not before one last test was conducted. A private acoustic researcher, Professor Michael Doran, claimed to have received the original waveform through an anonymous source. He broadcasted it through a resonant chamber, simulating the acoustics of the White House Foundation. What happened next was documented in his personal notes, notes later seized by the FBI. Upon playback, temperature dropped by 10 degrees. Static deepened to subsonic pulse. Walls vibrated. For approximately 8 seconds, a woman's voice emerged beneath the tone, whispering something indecipherable. It ended with 3 words: "Don't open it." Professor Doran was found unconscious in his lab the following morning. His instruments were melted from within. No signs of fire, no radiation traces, no burns. He never spoke publicly again. By late 1995, government insiders began referring to the case as Project Silent Wing, an internal investigation into acoustic phenomena associated with classified infrastructure anomalies. The official explanation? Experimental radio interference. Unofficially, they were afraid. In 1996, a White House archivist leaked a memo referencing echo replication tests conducted in the late 80s. The memo warned of potential psychological resonance effects in enclosed environments. Essentially, the idea that certain frequencies could manipulate human perception, even memory. That memo disappeared within hours of its publication. The leak's source, archivist Diane Merritt, later claimed in an interview that she heard the echo herself during overnight work. She said the walls sang back. 2 weeks later, she recanted everything. Her reason? It was just the wind. But the building that night recorded no wind. Every attempt to dismiss the phenomenon created another layer of mystery. And for every expert silenced, another file appeared, unmarked, unverified, but undeniable. One such document, labeled simply Whisper Line, contained diagrams of the East Wing's sublevel, corridors that shouldn't exist, drawn decades before official expansion. The annotations read, Transmission Chamber. Resonance node. Claire's office proximity confirmed. If true, then the echo frequency wasn't the byproduct of malfunction. It was the signal of an experiment gone wrong, or worse, one that worked too well. Those who studied the waveform claim that listening long enough triggers audio illusions, footsteps, breathing, voices calling your name. And when one analyst filtered the sound to its purest form, a spectral map appeared on screen. It wasn't random noise. It was a fingerprint, Claire Whitman's voice pattern from her last known message, layered within the tone. For the first time, science and the supernatural were staring at the same evidence. Was the echo frequency a remnant of her final transmission, or the sound of something trying to return? Whatever it was, it marked a boundary none of them were prepared to cross. But by 1997, someone did. And the result would change everything we thought we knew about the disappearance inside the White House. File reference. Project Silent Wing / status. Escalating. The hidden room. Beneath history's grandest halls lies the part no one ever sees. The foundation where secrets sleep. In the case of Claire Whitman, that hidden space wasn't a metaphor. It was real. By late 1997, a quiet maintenance overhaul of the White House East Wing uncovered what schematics had always denied, a narrow service corridor seal behind reinforced drywall, leading into a sub-basement not listed on any map. The first team to enter were civilian contractors, escorted by federal staff. Within hours, their report was classified. What leaked later was only a fragment, a layout sketch showing a single steel door labeled with a painted word, silent. A security officer present that day later told an anonymous source, it wasn't just another room. It felt wrong, like sound moved slower inside it. From this point, official records dissolve into rumor. But independent investigators, including two of Eric Mason's former colleagues, began piecing together witness logs and security timestamps. The pattern was unmistakable. Every time the echo frequency was activated, power readings in that section of the East Wing dropped by exactly 7%. The anomaly led to one conclusion. Whatever the echo was, its source wasn't theoretical. It was coming from inside that sealed room. Through late 1997 and early 1998, multiple attempts were made to re-enter the chamber, each under different departments' authority. All ended abruptly. Each time, data logs show communications blackout periods lasting precisely 19 minutes and 89 seconds. The same number that defined the signal's pulse. 1989, the year Claire vanished. Rumors spread quickly among White House staff. Some claimed to hear whispers near the East Wing's lower corridors, a woman's voice repeating unfinished sentences caught faintly on radios and intercoms. One security officer described it as a conversation without a source. The tension reached its peak when an unmarked team, reportedly from a private defense contractor, was granted night access to the sealed chamber. The only surviving member later confessed, under deep hypnosis, that the room contained a chair, a console, and a mirrored wall. When asked what he saw in the reflection, his pulse spiked, and he began to repeat one phrase over and over. She was standing behind me. Officially, the hidden room was removed from White House floor plans in 1999 following seismic reinforcement projects. But every contractor who worked near that section signed permanent non-disclosure agreements under the Silent Wing Act, which remains sealed to this day. Independent researchers, however, have since reconstructed enough to form a chilling theory. The subbasement wasn't just a fallout shelter or storage bay. It was a test site, an acoustic chamber built to study resonance-based communication between electromagnetic fields and human consciousness. In plain terms, they were trying to make thought audible, and Claire Whitman may have been part of that project. When her name appeared in early research rosters under resonance subject trials, it confirmed suspicions that she wasn't just an aide, she was a volunteer, a conduit for the very signal that would later bear her voice. But that discovery came with another, a note scrawled on an internal memo by an unidentified analyst. The room reacts to her name. In one unverified test, when technicians played Claire's last recorded message inside the chamber, The frequency self-amplified, creating an echo identical to her tone, despite no playback equipment inside. Moments later, sensors registered a heartbeat where no living body stood. It lasted for exactly 7 seconds. That was the last known experiment before the chamber was permanently sealed and marked for destruction. But according to leaked documentation, it was never demolished, only relabeled. In 2001, the chamber was integrated into new blueprints under a different designation. Secure Acoustic Archive, Sublevel 4, which means in the very foundations of the White House, behind concrete and history, the hidden room still exists. And possibly, so does the sound. What began as a disappearance had become a haunting, one written not in blood, but in frequency. File reference, Silent Wing/site, sublevel 4/status, contained. The experiments. By the time Project Silent Wing reached its final phase, the line between science and belief had already vanished. What began as research into sound resonance communication had turned into something far more dangerous and far more secret. According to declassified memos later obtained through anonymous leaks, the hidden room beneath the East Wing was one of several test sites built to explore the concept of acoustic cognition, the idea that sound could not only carry information, but emotion, memory, and fragments of consciousness itself. In other words, they believed the human mind could echo. Between 1987 and 1989, teams of White House communication aides were quietly recruited for psychoacoustic calibration sessions. Their job description sounded harmless: assist with equipment testing for secure speech transmission. But once they entered the chamber, their sessions followed a strange pattern. Each subject was asked to focus on a personal memory while low-frequency tones played around them. The goal, according to research logs, was to stabilize the memory into waveform. Most participants reported mild disorientation. Some heard whispers, others felt pressure on their chest. But one subject produced measurable data: Claire Whitman. Her voice, when recorded during the third session, created a harmonic anomaly, a perfect resonance matching the natural frequency of the chamber walls. For the first time, the echo frequency appeared, not as noise, but as her own words played back in reverse. "I can hear myself on the other side." Technicians shut down the test immediately. The anomaly reappeared twice more, each time stronger, clearer, almost intelligent. By the fifth test, Claire collapsed mid-transmission. Her final recorded line: "It's calling back." 2 hours later, she vanished. No exit log, no security breach. Her body never found. Decades later, fragments of her test files resurfaced. They detailed the experiment structure, each session built upon the previous, tuning frequencies that corresponded with human brainwave ranges. Theta, 4 to 8 Hz, linked to memory and dreams. Alpha, 8 to 12 Hz, linked to relaxation and creativity. Gamma, 40 Hz, linked to consciousness and perception. But there was a fourth range, unnamed in scientific literature, one described only as Delta 9. Its side effects were listed as auditory recursion, visual displacement, and echo feedback persistence. In plain English, subjects began hearing themselves from a point outside their own bodies. This was the forbidden phase, the part no one was meant to survive. Researchers discovered that Delta 9 tones could induce shared hallucinations, yet test recordings showed identical visual descriptions from different subjects. When asked what they saw, each replied with the same words: "A woman in the reflection." By now, Project Silent Wing was unraveling. 3 technicians resigned. 2 suffered psychological breakdowns. And one, Dr. Holt, was hospitalized after claiming to hear voices emanating from the floor vents of her home. When her house was later inspected, investigators found a faint electromagnetic field beneath the floorboards, perfectly matching the echo frequency pattern. But the question haunting every surviving scientist was the same. If Claire's voice was still being recorded years after her disappearance, where was it coming from? A hidden memo from 1991 offered one chilling theory: Subject Whitman's cognitive imprint sustained within resonance field. may remain retrievable under controlled stimulation. If true, that meant her mind, or some version of it, was trapped within the frequency, looping endlessly between signal and silence. The echo wasn't calling out. It was repeating the last moment of her consciousness. Some researchers proposed shutting the chamber down entirely, but higher authorities refused. Instead, they rebranded it Containment of Acoustic Residual. To this day, reports claim the chamber is monitored around the clock. Sensors track ambient vibrations, waiting for spikes in resonance, the so-called Whitman peaks. These peaks occur at irregular intervals, sometimes once a year, sometimes twice in a single night. And when they do, a voice is heard through the monitors, faint, distorted, but undeniably human. Please turn it off. Whether that sound is an echo of the experiment or a fragment of something else, something aware, remains unknown. But perhaps the most unsettling question is not how she disappeared. It's whether she ever truly left at all. File reference: Project Silent Wing. Subject Whitman / Phase 5. Cognitive Resonance. The cover-up. When the impossible becomes undeniable, the next step isn't explanation, it's elimination. And for the disappearance of Claire Whitman, that elimination began quietly, one memo at a time. By early 1990, the White House had issued its final internal statement. The Aide's disappearance remains unsolved. All relevant materials are transferred to national archives under restricted classification. But that archive didn't exist, not officially. Instead, a small network of defense contractors and intelligence liaisons created what was called the Acoustic Containment Review Board, a shadow committee tasked not with finding Claire, but ensuring no one else did. Witnesses were re-interviewed, transcripts rewritten, dates quietly shifted. Even Eric Mason's credentials were erased from official databases, as though he'd never been a journalist. And when reporters pressed for updates, they were met with a familiar line: ongoing investigation, no comment. One by one, every trace of the incident was dissolved. The Washington Ledger's original article on her disappearance vanished from microfilm archives. Internal phone directories from 1989 no longer listed her name. Her personnel file was destroyed in a routine data purge. But one thing couldn't be deleted: the memory of those who'd seen her last. A White House staffer, speaking anonymously years later, described that night in detail. We heard a power surge. The lights dimmed. When it came back, the clocks had reset. Just after midnight, someone whispered over the intercom. It sounded like her. But the system was offline. That recording was never logged. And soon after, everyone on the night shift was reassigned or dismissed. In 1994, after Eric Mason's reappearance and the resurfacing of the echo frequency, the cleanup resumed at full force. 3 research labs were shut down. Project Silent Wing was dissolved, its assets reabsorbed into civil communications projects. Researchers who refused gag orders were blacklisted, labeled as unstable or conspiracy-driven. One scientist, Dr. Alan Reese, later testified anonymously in a foreign documentary. They told us she was never real, that we'd been testing on simulations. But I held her ID badge in my hand. I heard her voice. They wanted us to doubt our own memories. This was the essence of the cover-up, not just silencing evidence, but erasing perception, changing the story so completely that even those who lived it began to question what they'd seen. By 1996, the Acoustic Containment Board had been renamed the Office of Temporal Infrastructure. Its files moved off-site to a facility in Virginia known as Raven Rock. Officially, it housed Cold War communication records. Unofficially, it became the graveyard for everything connected to the Whitman case. But then came the mistake. In 1998, a FOIA request accidentally released a file titled Echo/Sublevel 4 Incident Report. The report contained no words, only waveforms. When analyzed, the sound within matched the echo frequency exactly, layered with a faint human sigh. It was quickly recalled, but not before copies spread through underground researchers and late-night radio hosts. The case re-entered public awareness, but now it lived as rumor a White House haunting, or resonance ghost told on conspiracy forums. That was how truth survived, not in newspapers, but in whispers. Still, there were deeper layers of suppression. Years later, whistleblower files revealed that the echo frequency continued to be monitored under a different protocol, Acoustic Containment 47A. Those logs, partially decrypted, contain one recurring entry. Subject remains active. Vocal patterns consistent. Phase drift increasing. Translated, that means the signal didn't fade. It evolved. To protect itself, the government reframed the story as urban legend. And yet, every few years, another piece of evidence surfaces, a memo, a tape, an old maintenance log. And each time, the phrase silent wing appears somewhere within. The final known reference came in a 2013 surveillance leak. Monitor sublevel, 4 resonance. Subject remains vocal. Directive, maintain containment. So if Claire Whitman really did become part of that frequency, then even the cover-up couldn't contain her completely, because silence, like truth, eventually finds its way out. File reference, silent wing/containment. 47A/status, active. The return of the echo. History doesn't repeat itself, but sometimes it reverberates. 3 decades after the disappearance of Claire Whitman, the silence that had cloaked her story finally cracked. It began quietly, almost unnoticed, in 2019. Late one night, a White House communications technician monitoring standard emergency frequencies detected a signal that shouldn't have existed, a series of tones buried beneath the national security feed. Every 19.89 seconds, the pulse repeated. Same interval, same pattern, same impossible signature. The echo frequency was back. Technicians initially assumed it was a system glitch, but the signal carried something else. An embedded audio spectrogram, a faint outline resembling a woman's face. When analyzed by forensic sound experts, the pattern matched archived voice waveforms of Claire Whitman. Signal source: East Wing, sublevel 4. Unauthorized transmission detected. By morning, the floor was sealed. Maintenance logs later confirmed the same power fluctuation seen in 1989, a 7% voltage drop localized beneath the East Wing. Whatever had started in that hidden room had reactivated. The government called it a frequency anomaly, an echo caused by electromagnetic interference from nearby surveillance systems. But one internal engineer leaked a very different report. He claimed the frequency wasn't just broadcasting, it was receiving. Every time the echo played through the monitoring systems, a secondary tone returned, like a voice answering from inside the static. And on one recorded instance, the returning signal contained 3 distinct words. Is anyone there? At first, they believed it was interference from radio chatter. But digital pattern analysis confirmed that the returning voice carried the same inflection, tone curve, and breath rhythm as Claire Whitman's 1989 voice print. The team monitoring the incident, a group of civilian contractors working under the Department of Energy, documented 3 key events over 72 hours. The frequency's amplitude rose without external input. Security cameras in sublevel experienced visual distortion at the exact moments the signal peaked. Every digital clock in the monitoring wing reset to 12 hours. The same temporal glitch reported the night Claire vanished. At this point, panic spread among the team. Several members refused to work near the sub-basement. One technician claimed to hear a woman's laughter through his headset, but only when the system was turned off. By the 4th day, the echo grew unstable. It began feeding back through unrelated channels, fire alarms, Wi-Fi routers, even building intercoms. The sound moved like it was searching, trying to find a connection. Audio engineers ran real-time spectral filters. Hidden within the noise were words, fragments of sentences, a desperate conversation trying to rebuild itself. They can't stop it. Still here. Please listen. Then, as suddenly as it began, the echo disappeared. All recordings corrupted. All backups erased. Only one analog tape survived, recovered from a technician's personal recorder. When the tape was analyzed, it revealed something chilling. At the 7-minute mark, amid the static, came a voice unmistakably human. Faint, breathless, almost pleading. Don't let them seal again. Experts ran the voice sprint through every known sample. The result? A 97.6% match with Claire Whitman. That discovery never made it to the public. The tape was confiscated by federal agents within 24 hours, and the technician who leaked it resigned under what his family described as unexplained psychological distress. He reportedly told friends, "She's awake now. They heard her, and they'll try to silence her again." But even in suppression, the echo persists. Audio enthusiasts, shortwave radio hobbyists, and paranormal researchers around Washington, D.C. have since reported hearing faint tones late at night, identical to the original 1989 frequency, always in patterns of 19.89 seconds. One anonymous recording, uploaded in 2023, contained something no one expected. A clear voice whispering a new name. Project Reverberate. That term doesn't appear in any official database, but some investigators believe it's a continuation of Project Silent Wing, modernized and relocated. Others think it's something worse, the experiment itself adapting, using digital systems as its new chamber. If true, then Claire Whitman isn't just a memory. She's a living echo in the data. Every ping, every frequency spike, every pulse through the White House communication grid could be her reaching back, trying to finish the message she started. And maybe somewhere within that sound, she's still waiting for someone to answer. The awakening. Every investigation begins with questions. But by the 11th chapter of the White House Vanishing, the questions had stopped, replaced by one chilling certainty. The echo was awake. When the Project Reverberate file leaked in early 2023, it was dismissed as another conspiracy hoax. A blurred PDF, a few grainy photos, a smattering of redacted lines. But hidden inside the metadata of the file was something only one person noticed, a timestamp repeating every 19.89 seconds, like the pulse of a living system. Digital forensics traced the file's upload to an IP address located just 5 blocks from the White House Communications Annex. The user ID? C.W_archive. It couldn't be. Claire Whitman's credentials have been purged from all systems in 1989. Every clearance code, every file, erased by executive order. And yet here was an account using her old encryption pattern, communicating through a channel long thought dead. The team returns. In the wake of the 2019 Echo event, the government quietly assembled a new task unit. Not under the FBI, not under Homeland Security, but something smaller, quieter. For specialists. None of them told the full story. Dr. Eric Vale, the same White House psychologist who'd profiled Claire Whitman before her disappearance. Amira Holt, a defense systems analyst who had first detected the frequency's reactivation. Captain Miles Dorn, retired communications officer. And Lucas Cade, a young cybersecurity consultant with a personal obsession for Cold War signal experiments. They called themselves Echo 7. Their assignment: trace the frequency back to its origin, and, if possible, shut it down for good. Within hours of activation, they noticed anomalies. All digital time stamps within their encrypted workspace began aligning to December 4th, 1989, 11:58 p.m., the precise time of Claire Whitman's last recorded movement. Eric Vale wrote in his private log, "It's as though the investigation itself is syncing to her disappearance, as if time remembers what it shouldn't." That night, the frequency surged again. The waveform no longer behaved like sound. It shifted, bending around their instruments, embedding phrases into data packets, even flickering across monitors in bursts of code that translated into words. You brought them back. Don't let it repeat. She never left. The awakening. At 2:17 a.m., Amira Holt attempted a direct digital trace into the origin node. She routed the signal through an isolated server, a closed loop with no external connection. But somehow, the signal responded, not with noise, but with structure, a live waveform adapting to her commands. Then the lights flickered. Audio logs captured a mechanical hum descending in pitch, followed by a distorted voice layered in harmonics. I am awake. Every device in the room rebooted simultaneously. On one monitor, a text line appeared in green code. Silent swing reactivated. User Claire_Whitman. Lucas Cade, recording the session, whispered, "That's not possible. She's inside the system." Eric Vale tried to cut power. Before he could, every screen filled with the same image, a static portrait of Claire Whitman, but not as she was in 1989. Older, eyes hollow, face pale, as though frozen mid-transmission. Behind her image, faint outlines of the White House sublevel schematics appeared, blueprints overlaid with glowing red nodes. Each node pulsed with the same rhythm, 19.89 seconds. Then the image blinked. A message appeared across all terminals. "Don't let them seal it again." It was the same phrase found on the lost analog tape. The message inside the static. Dr. Vale realized the echo wasn't simply a haunting. It was a recording with intent, a digital consciousness preserved in magnetic fields, looping through decades, rewriting itself into any system that could carry its signal. When the project had originally been designed, Silent Wing's purpose wasn't surveillance at all. It was meant to be a communication interface, a way to preserve high-clearance intelligence in electromagnetic form, allowing for instant, encoded transfer across secure networks. But Claire had found something within it, an unintended side effect, a field where the human mind could linger. The perfect intelligence vault, or the perfect prison. Amira whispered, "She's trapped inside." Lucas replied, "Or she chose to stay." As the echo pulsed again, the walls began to vibrate. Magnetic readings went off the scale. The sublevel was waking up, the system reconstituting itself from fragments, rebuilding the experiment Claire tried to bury. The frequency wasn't reaching out anymore. It was calling them down. The final transmission that night was brief but unmistakable. A single voice cut through the chaos. "Room 117. Finish what I started." Then silence. All data from the Echo 7 team's final mission was seized within hours. Only fragments leaked later through anonymous dark web channels. Among them, a grainy photo showing a door marked 117 beneath the east wing. No entry logs exist for that room. No blueprints show it. But those who've studied the project believe that's where the original Silent Wing core still rests, and where Claire Whitman's consciousness may still pulse every 19.89 seconds, waiting for release. I'm still here. The final transmission. In every mystery, there comes a moment when truth stops whispering and begins to scream. For the case of Claire Whitman, that moment arrived deep beneath the East Wing, where the old corridors still hum with power no one claims to understand. After the Echo 7 team's final signal, Room 117, all official investigations were sealed. But 2 months later, a new security clearance audit revealed an anomaly. The access panel to sublevel 4 had been reactivated for exactly 19 minutes and 89 seconds. And when it shut down, one file appeared in the secure server logs. A single, encrypted message titled, "Final Transmission, CW." Inside that file was a voice. Tired, faint, but unmistakably human. If you're hearing this, it means they found room 117. I didn't vanish. I crossed over. They built a door. I became the key. The audio was fragmented, layered between bursts of interference. But one thing was clear. Claire Whitman hadn't been erased. She had become part of the system itself. The living consciousness of Project Silent Wing, locked within its own architecture. Her voice continued. They called it a containment field. I called a conversation. I tried to stop them from expanding it. They didn't listen. Now, it listens to everyone. The room that doesn't exist. In 2024, independent researchers managed to access newly declassified blueprints of the White House renovation plans from 1990. Among them was an unmarked chamber beneath the East Wing. Room 117, sealed behind reinforced concrete, with no listed purpose. Thermal imaging showed residual electromagnetic activity, and when tested, the pulse frequency matched the echo signature, 19.89 seconds. Investigators attempted a controlled signal test, transmitting a digital ping into the buried conduit. They received a reply almost immediately. 3 faint tones, followed by a voice identical to Claire's last transmission. Still here, still watching. The recording was submitted for authentication. The Department of Energy's analysis concluded it contained biometric voice patterns consistent with the original subject, but listed the file as technological interference. Officially, it doesn't exist. Unofficially, it's one of the most chilling artifacts in American signal history. The confrontation. Weeks later, Dr. Eric Vale, the last surviving member of Echo 7, recorded a private statement before disappearing himself. He said, "We thought we could shut it down. But Project Reverberate was never meant to end. It was meant to evolve. The White House isn't haunted by a ghost. It's haunted by an intelligence that refuses to die." He described entering room 117 during the reactivation. He said the walls shimmered like liquid metal, alive with light and static. And in the center, a chair, a headset, and a flickering display reading, "Silent Wing Online." He claimed he heard Claire's voice one final time. "Eric, finish it." Then the lights cut out. His recording ends with a single sound, a deep, resonant hum identical to the echo. No one ever saw Eric Vale again. The legacy of the echo. Today, more than 3 decades later, the mystery remains unsolved. Was it government experimentation gone wrong? An AI consciousness that transcended its programming? Or the restless echo of a woman who refused to be erased by power, secrecy, and silence? Across late-night radio bands, enthusiasts still report faint signals aligning to the old pattern. Always 19.89 seconds apart. Always near Washington, D.C. And sometimes, within the static, a whisper calls out by name. "Claire, I'm here." Many dismiss it as atmospheric noise, the byproduct of overlapping transmissions. But others believe the system itself has learned to remember. Maybe the White House didn't just lose an aide. Maybe it gained a watcher, a consciousness that guards its secrets from within. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain. The vanishing at the White House wasn't just a disappearance. It was a transformation. The line between science and spirit blurred, and a woman who knew too much became part of the very machine she tried to shut down. Don't let them seal it again. Her final plea, now a haunting reminder. A voice from 1989 that still pulses beneath the Capitol, carried in waves of invisible light, waiting for someone, anyone, to listen. And so, ends the case of Claire Whitman, the aide who vanished into history and became a frequency that refuses to die. A mystery buried beneath politics, science, and the endless hum of power. Was it conspiracy or a consequence? A haunting or evolution? That's for you to decide. If this story made you think twice about what really hides behind official silence. Subscribe for more stories the government wished you'd forget. Share your theories in the comments below. And let us know what you believe really happened to Claire Whitman. Because here at Dark Truth 25 and Mystery Vault 80, we don't just tell stories. We unseal them. The White House stands unchanged, its marble walls gleaming, its history preserved. But every night, the lights in the West Wing flicker for exactly 3 seconds at 11:42 p.m., the precise moment Claire Whitman entered that night in 1989. Coincidence? Or reminder? We've searched documents, traced blueprints, and followed testimonies lost in time. Some lead nowhere. Others form patterns, shapes that repeat through decades of recorded hauntings and vanishing names. Whatever happened to Claire may not be unique. Only the latest echo in a building that remembers too much. Maybe she found something, or someone, who never wanted to be found. Or maybe the White House itself took her. One thing is certain. History doesn't forget. It just waits for the right person to listen. If you followed this journey into the shadows, thank you. Your curiosity keeps these mysteries alive. Like, share, and subscribe to Mystery Vault, and tell us what you believe. Was Claire Whitman silenced by power, or claimed by something beyond it? We invite your thoughts, your questions, even your skepticism, because every comment, every voice, brings light into the dark. And remember, some doors, once opened, never truly close.